first speaker who's going to host our panel as well. The only constant is change, and I think there couldn't be a more fit note. Would you please welcome the global supply chain expert and president of the Atlas Network, Mr. Kerim Kfuri.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Hope you're doing all right. First of all, I want to say thanks to Deliver America, the staff, and all the speakers, and have worked tirelessly to make sure that we have a wonderful event here. We're going to have a great panel up here in a minute. I want to tell you a little bit about myself first. My name is Kerim Kfuri. I'm the president and CEO of the Atlas Network, a global supply chain solutions company located in New York. I'm also a public speaker and an author. But more than anything else, I'm a supply chain optimist. And I think that that's very, very important these days when we're looking for solutions in the face of chaos. So what are we talking about? Look at our current landscape today. You know, just when we got out of the pandemic, we started to face trade wars, we started to face tariff hikes and pauses, governmental shutdowns, port strikes, natural disasters, and basically we've all remained constant in our mission to ensure that consumers get what they need when they need them. This is the most important part of the supply chain. And so we understand that the only constant in global supply chain is change. And so with this in mind, I'm going to bring up our panelists. We're going to sit down. We're going to have a great conversation today about how to manage change, the things that happen in the global economy, and how essentially we all look to deal with this. So welcome up our panelists one at a time, and we'll look forward to have a good conversation. So, there we go. So before we get started, I'm going to have each one of our panelists sort of introduce themselves, who they are and where they are coming from. And then we'll get into a good conversation around how the only constant is change in global supply chain. So why don't we start with you first, Ellen?
Good morning. My name is Ellen Kapiloff. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Lacoste, based in New York City.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abe Eshkenazi, currently the CEO for the Association of Supply Chain Management.
Good morning. My name is Prashant. I'm the head of supply chain for SwagUp, based out of New Jersey.
Very good. So what I want to do to kind of get this conversation going, because there's so many things we can touch upon, is let's really kind of break it down into three main areas. And I would like to have your thoughts, your opinions around each one of these as we sort of have this discussion. You know, as it relates to global supply chain, in my mind, it really comes down to people, first and foremost, both the people that work for companies as well as who are impacted by the global supply chain, the processes that we deal with in global supply chain, how to enhance them when they're disrupted, how we work through these things. And then finally, as I said before, I'm a supply chain optimist, so the opportunities that exist that would come about. And we're hearing about, obviously in the news these days, that places like Amazon have had major cuts. I think I heard 30,000 with 14,000 coming from the headquarters, as I heard from Prashant earlier today. And what does that really mean in the end of the day? So why don't we start with this idea of why people are important, have to be paid attention to, both internally and externally. What are your thoughts, Ellen, as it relates to global supply chain?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we hear a lot about AI coming into place, coming in to take people's jobs. And really, AI is great to help make better decisions faster, but it's that critical thinking and knowing the customer and knowing the economy and the landscape. Those are the people. That's what's going to drive those decisions and make the company better and make the customer happy. And so I'm not a firm believer that AI is going to take everyone's jobs. I think it's going to help. People, this is what's running the business. These are the people that we want to come to work. They have really niche expertise. Under me is customs, warehousing, transportation, order fulfillment. That's what's going to get your holiday shipping done. So the UPS announcement, very concerning. But you know, the people, that's what makes the company. That's what makes the brand a brand. That's where customers want to shop. It's how you treat your employees, how you lead as an empathetic leader. And so they're the backbone of a company.
Absolutely. And I would say, Abe, why don't you tell us your thoughts, but also maybe how bottlenecks impact within the workforce, too?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, everybody's been to how many conferences, and we'll start talking about AI, resiliency, agility, sustainability, and at the end of the presentation, they said, don't forget about your people. That's where we ought to start the conversation, is about the talent necessary to take advantage and leverage the technology investment and the capital investments that organizations are making right now. We're seeing an imbalance right now between the investment in technology on digital transformation, obviously with visibility and transparency and traceability key to every organization right now. The challenge that we have is that we're not hiring or we're not training and developing the talent necessary to take advantage of the technology that we're investing. So to the point that we were making before, just Ellen was making here, made a huge investment in technology, and we're critically gapped in critical thinking and real-world experience. Those are bad combinations to have a technology that's much more powerful than we're using in individuals who don't understand inputs or outputs. And so the investment that needs to be made right now is commensurate with technology. We're not saying don't invest in technology. Obviously, that's short-sighted. It's invest in your talent to take advantage of your technology.
And Prashant, your thoughts in general with the role of people internal and external?
No, absolutely. I completely agree with what Abe and Alan said. In a very simple words, what I've been seeing on a very, very daily basis is that, yes, investing in our people is absolutely the must, but at the same time, making them really understand what this technology is going to do. Do you really want it? How is going to impact our teams? How is going to impact our processes? Are we ready for it before even implementing it? And that's the one key point I think most of the leaders are forgetting before implementing, because everybody, or I wouldn't say everybody, but most of them are looking at only numbers and not the human factor. And then questions happens like, why did we fail? And I think we need to start from the get-go, as we're saying, investing in our main asset, which is people.
So what I would also like to say about people is that when it comes to the global supply chain, the most important component are the consumers. Because if the consumers don't get what they need, when they need them, at the cost that they need to get them for, then the supply chain breaks down. So it is people first in many ways, even when it comes to the external side, not just the way you run your own operations, but the external side. So I guess my questions are with regards to some of your companies or businesses, how have you been looking at making sure that consumers don't really feel the brunt of supply chain disruptions, whether it's costs and tariffs or it's delays or whatever it may be? How have you continued to deal with it? I guess we can start with you, Prashant, since you're done.
Sure. Number one, I think as soon as some tariff news has been hitting on almost every daily basis, the first thing we started working on is to communicate with our customer right away and letting them know this is not a company's regulation or company news, it is a government news and is impacting everyone. I think being honest and transparent with the customer, they will definitely is understanding, and they understand because it's all over the news. Another part we are also doing is educating our team how to communicate out to the customer that we were not able to reach. Training our CX team to take those calls directly from the customer and getting ready for all the other types of calls that going to come towards them and educating them on that sense. I think combination of that internally is absolutely helpful to generate external results, especially customer retention and making sure the customer experience is up to par, and also letting the customer know that our services and the quality is not going to go down, and we will do everything in our power to make sure the cost is not moved towards them, and we will choose some of the cost, and then we continue to discuss with them.
And one more quick question for you and Abe is, have you faced any kind of attrition rate because of what has been happening where customers have just said, you know, it's just too expensive or otherwise? Or has everyone really in your business environment come to understand this because the impacts have been limited and so forth and you've absorbed most, or?
Yes, there's a twofold answer to it. What certain sets of customer is looking for much reasonable pricing. So we do give them an offering of a different products with a different material that doesn't have that big of an impact, and try to have them, give them some options. And if they do not like the options, of course, they are walking away. So that's one set of the customer. Second set of customers, ourselves. When we are not communicating appropriately, that's when they are walking away from us because they didn't understand the full picture.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to take a look at it from a different perspective because we generally don't deal with the direct consumer that's buying from the retail otherwise. I'm going to take a look at it from a macro perspective in terms of the consumer experience within supply chain and the lack of information that we are providing for the consumer about the products that they buy and that they use. Not only where did it come from, how was it made, how did it get here, what happens to it after I'm done with it. Take any product in your house, from a pen to a coffee mug, and try to trace it back to origin, and you're going to see how extremely difficult it is for us supply chain professionals to try to discern it. For the general consumer, it's almost impossible for them to understand what organizations are doing relative to sustainability, relative to resiliency. And so it's extremely difficult for us as an organization, as an industry, to say that we need to be transparent and traceable in terms of what we do, but yet we don't provide that information for the consumer. Too often we leave the consumer out of the equation in terms of sustainability and responsibility for supply chains. And I think we need to include them in the conversation, not only in terms of information and providing accurate, relevant information. Technology is there. Organizations have this information. We're just not making it readily available for individuals and organizations and consumers to understand the complexity of supply chain. The pandemic moved the term supply chain onto everybody's table, from the kitchen to the boardroom. But there is a significant lack of understanding of the complexity of supply chain. So we talk about reshoring and nearshoring and friendshoring, and the consumers have absolutely no idea what that means. What they understand is what Prashant is talking about. How much did it cost me yesterday? How much is it going to cost me tomorrow? And it comes down to price, price, and price for the majority of individuals, and we've got to move it out of that rubric.
For me, I'm an educator. So I have to educate my commercial team and even the C-suite of, here's what it's going to take to get this product in this location at this time, and provide menu options. Here's the cost. Here's the cost on the margin. Here's the cost for the consumer. Here's what it's going to cost for us. I also have to educate my vendors. I have to make sure I have the right vendors, and not every vendor can do the same job on the same lane or the same product. And so if you look at upcoming holiday shipping, I operate the way I shop, which is a lot. So I want to know, if I place an order, when am I getting the order? I don't care what goes on behind the scenes. When will it deliver to my apartment? And so I have to ask my vendors and say, how long will it take for express shipping, next day, ground? Okay, here's all the buckets. My team and my peers then have to put it in our stores, on our website, in our email blasts, and make sure our customer knows that if you order by this day, you're gonna get it this day. And there's gonna be a backlog. They have to know the backlog. We have to be transparent, because then the call centers get a crazy amount of calls. But I have to educate my peers who are not supply chain experts, and I don't want them to be. I want them to do what they're really good at, managing the stores, our wholesale customers, our marketing, our websites, our apps, and let them know, here's what the backlog looks like, and be very transparent. I think a customer today is looking for a deal. I'm looking for a deal. And I'm looking for the best price. I am loyal to a brand because of what they stand for, to a certain cost. That's me. That's how I shop. I think a lot of people shop the same way I do. You can get a shirt and change the logo, and they kind of look the same. And so I look at, okay, well, what does the brand stand for? Does it match what I stand for? Does that even matter? Sometimes it doesn't. But we have to be transparent with our customers. I have to be transparent with my internal customers, and I need to make sure my vendors know what the goal is, and they have to be transparent on what they can execute.
Understood. So with the only kind of constant being change, how do you really have a proactive process rather than a reactive process, whether it's with regards to negotiations or forecasting, to anticipate the fact that there are these uncontrollable factors? What have you all built into, let's say at Lacoste, some fail safes or some ideas around sort of planning for worst case scenarios with the best intention of an outcome? How do you sort of manage the disruption side and make it disruption proof?
I have to have a contingency plan for my contingency plan. And I'm just going to keep using peak season because Alo Yoga sent me 6 emails by the time I woke up, and it started to panic me, which I love them, by the way. You know, I have to take the forecasts and the promos of what we're going to do and then say, okay, but here's what the trend has been. And here's what we did last year, and here's what didn't work. So in September, I had a strategy meeting. And next week, I have a follow-up of the strategy meeting. But then I have to put a contingency plan in. Because when a promo doesn't work, or doesn't work the way you want it to, or it works too well, we're going to change it. We're going to extend it. We're going to shorten it. We're going to change what's on sale. We're going to make sure e-com matches our boutiques. We're going to watch what other retailers are doing. And so I have to be prepared for that because labor just doesn't show up, right? We have to plan for the labor. I have to make sure my vendors are successful. And so there's 3 different contingency plans on the table with a cost, with a different forecast that we're all ready to execute, and no one needs to know about it. My peers don't care as long as freight gets out the door. They're like a consumer. They don't actually care what happens. Just get it out the door and get it out the door as quick as you can. But you have to plan for the unexpected. Something will happen, right? There will be a storm. There will be a strike. There will be an outage somewhere that I can't control, although people think I can, which is great that they think I have so much power. Something's going to happen, but I can prepare for this. I can prepare for the trends. I can think of consumers the way they shop, the way I shop. I'm going to hold out for a deal. That's what we're going to do. And so we have to have a contingency plan.
Understood. Abe, your thoughts, I guess, as it maybe relates to processes for businesses on a macro level? Maybe they're looking at nearshoring or maybe looking at different countries, or how do you envision having a proactive rather than a reactive process for companies to be able to weather these storms?
Yeah, as Alan pointed out, if you have 3 scenario plans, you may want to do 3 cubed in terms of your scenario planning right now. And part of the challenge is planning horizons. They've shortened significantly. What you had planned, last quarter with the changes in terms of policy requires significant change, and we're not just talking about moving from one nearshore to another nearshore. We're talking about significant transformation of vendors, relationships that were developed over years, and you're now having to say, you know what, this is no longer meeting our financial or our brand expectations, and so this is where technology can help in terms of the scenario planning. But the challenge that we have is that the amount of change and how quickly the change is coming, every plan that you develop, as Alan pointed out, you can wake up tomorrow and it's gone. It's no longer relevant for the organization. And so I think part of the challenge is that continuity of policy is a necessary requirement. Financial systems and supply chains do not work well with uncertainty. And there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now about what the planning horizon is for the next 2 to 3 years. And so talking to a CEO or a CFO right now, telling them that, invest $2 to $3 billion for a plant that won't be operational in 2 to 3 years, you don't know where your market is going to be, you don't know where you're going to source from, you don't know where you're going to deliver to, and you don't know your pricing model. It's a tough argument to make to go to a board of directors and say, can we invest $2 to $3 billion into a new factory? And so part of the challenge is policy side. Again, leave that aside. Just continuity and reduction of uncertainty will help collectively the entire supply chain.
And Prashant, from your side, tell us a little bit about some of the changes or process-wise that you had done at SwagUp to help manage these uncertain times, whether it's with regards to tariffs or different rules or conditions. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on your end.
I would say one of the main things that we learned through all these policy changes and tariffs and the news is to calm down first. Take a step back, understand the news, look at if the news is even right. Is it even affecting me today, or is it affecting a month from now? And then start creating and make the moves appropriately, because what I have seen is a lot of leaders, even within my organization or outside of the organization, they tend to panic because they wanted to be ready with an answer. It shouldn't be that way. Should be take a step back, take a breather, understand the news, and then make the changes. Everything what Alan and Abe said, absolutely, you want to have contingencies, but these rules throw all your contingency out. All the policies will throw it out. So what's next? That's why you need to take a step back. However, yes, some of the things will come back, and you will have, as you say, option A, B, and C has to have ready. We did that with the tariff news. First time, we were not ready. Second time, we were started ready, like, oh, do we have secondary suppliers ready for the same products? Is our top 20 SKUs or 20% SKUs, do we have the secondary options ready for them just in case it is out of stock or the price is too high for the supplier A, in this case? What we also did was, as the tariff news are going, go to an expert and figure out your STS codes, STS policies, and make sure there's re-ran properly. And at that point, you will realize that making sure your STS information is correct can reduce your tariff or your fees much more down than it used to be. So I think those are the game plans is good to have set, but as I said, take a step back, take a breather, drink tea or whatever you want to drink at that point, and just analyze.
Of course, you have to be somehow a little bit negative with a positive intention, right? You have to plan ahead and ensure that you're going to be safeguarded for sure. All right, so let's go to some of our last questions here as part of this panel. And as I said before, sort of having this optimistic outlook. You know, in the face of chaos, there are opportunities. What do you see as far as opportunities in this space for your industry, for your company, in the wake of sort of, you know, the ups and downs of the global supply chain today and in the future? What are you looking at? What's exciting you? What are some of the things you're looking at these days?
Holistically, I think change of policies or change of news, it really brings out your gaps in your processes and gaps in the leadership as well. I think that's the best opportunity to train your team, right? Mentor them, focus with them, learn with them, and make them stronger. And on the process side, just continue to move forward and connect those dots. I think it's simple to say. I know it's hard to deliver, but that's supply chain. That's how I look at it.
I think there's significant opportunities right now within the supply chain in almost every vertical and in almost every activity, but it depends on people. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the conversation here. You have to have the right individuals that not only understand the organization's objectives, as Alan pointed out, but can pivot. And the days of just doing, hiring somebody, allowing them to do their job and check in with me when you have a problem, those days are gone. Now the engagement and understanding of individual role responsibilities and their contribution to the organization. We hear about talent shortages, and we hear about organizations, worrying about where are they going to find their talent. Well, when we ask individuals and organizations, what's their number one asset? They're going to tell us their talent and their people, and it should be. If we do asset rationalization, do you invest in your worst performing asset or your best performing asset? And if we take a look at where the investments are right now, they're not in the talent side. They're not in retention. They're not in recruitment. And so I think we need a better focus on the talent side. The technology is moving much faster than we are capable of understanding right now. It is moving at light speed. And so you better have the individuals that understand and can relate the information and make it usable and enable your organization to be not only resilient, which means that you're in business no matter what, but be agile. And that's taking advantage of the opportunities and the disruptions when they occur, because they will occur every day right now. And if you have the opportunity to take advantage of that disruption, that moves your organization much further along than trying to catch up to the challenges, as Prashant was pointing out. If you're paying attention to the news every day and trying to make your decisions, that's it's a slow walk. Yeah.
I think for an optimistic view, I think since the pandemic, operators are thriving, real operators are thriving in this chaos of supply chain, of what has been going on. It used to be nobody cared about the operators until there was an issue, until you didn't have toilet paper on your shelves. And so real operators are like, okay, what's next? Let's keep going. They're 6 steps ahead. When I say I have a contingency plan, my team has built a contingency plan without asking. They are 6 steps ahead of what the business is doing and the consumer. And so watching an operator thrive and having a team to do it is the best you're gonna get, and wanting to do it. I think the opportunity is, as leaders and as companies, when we say we don't have talent, where are we gonna get it? The employee has changed. The employee has taken a step back and said, okay, I don't want to work 90 hours a week and miss my family growing up or be off. I have a rule on my team. When you're in the office, you're in. When you're out of the office, you are out of that office. And we have to have backups. We have to have cross trainings. That's my job, to make sure people are out. I don't think the talent wants to work the 90 hours a week on their vacation, missing a soccer game or a school play, or just doing something they love to do, right? And I think those are the rock stars that we're missing because we're having these mandates that don't really make sense because maybe we as leaders made some bad decisions early on. And so when you have that good talent, that flexible working is so many different things. And I think we have to adapt to what the employee is looking for, because when you have a happy employee, they're gonna go above and beyond. You're not gonna ask them. And when you have that employee that feels valued and is paid for what they're doing and not for doing everyone's job, they're gonna keep doing it. And they're gonna wanna come to work, and they're gonna tell other people in their network about the company. And so I think that is a huge opportunity in making sure they have the right tools in their toolbox to be successful and have a career.
Yeah, no, of course. I think, as you said, the greatest ambassadors are your own people who basically believe in the mission and you've treated them well, and there's that balance, as you said. You know, I want to thank this panel for a great discussion today, and just in conclusion to say that, you know, as we look at global supply chain and sort of this only constant being change, that we do have to focus in on the people, as we've said up here today, your processes, having proactive processes, not necessarily reactive, and those opportunities that do exist too to be disruption proof. And in many ways it comes down to being nimble and agile and adaptable, being problem solvers, right? The role of the operator now being extremely important, supply chain people having a seat at the table being extremely important. So again, we can't thank you enough for a great conversation today, and good luck to all of us in the realm of global supply chain and navigating these challenges. Thank you so much, really appreciate it.